Have you ever wondered how ants deal with death in their colony? Welcome to the fascinating world of ants, a realm where life and death coexist in the most extraordinary manner. Picture this: an ant drops dead in the hustle and bustle of the colony. The tiny carcass remains untouched for about 2 days, a period that might suggest a wake, a time for the other ants to pay their respects. Then, in what seems like a respectful procession, the living ants carry the fallen comrade to an ant graveyard, a final tribute to its contribution to the colony. But hold on a moment. This isn't a social obligation, nor a healing ritual to ease the pain of loss. It's not that the ants are grieving or mourning their fallen comrade. So, if it's not a funeral, then what's really happening? Stay with us as we delve deeper into the intriguing world of ants and their unique approach to death. 2 days after an ant dies, a peculiar thing happens. The ant colony, in its ceaseless hustle and bustle, seems to suddenly become aware of the lifeless member. This realization doesn't spring from an emotional response or a social obligation, but rather from a chemical reaction. The tiny ant corpse begins to emit a particular chemical known as oleic acid. This acid, though invisible to our eyes, carries a scent that to an ant spells one thing and one thing only: death. To us, death might mean a sense of loss or the end of a physical existence. But to an ant, it's simply the smell of oleic acid. Once this scent permeates the air, the living ants spring into action. They pick up their fallen comrade, not in a mourning procession, but with the efficiency of a cleanup crew. The dead ant is seen as a decaying intruder, a potential threat to the cleanliness and safety of their colony. And so, they carry it off to a special area, a sort of ant graveyard, where they dispose of it without ceremony. Ants, you see, rely heavily on chemical signals, or pheromones, to navigate their world. They use these signals to find food, to communicate, and even to identify the living from the dead. When an ant dies, it takes about 2 days for its body to start decomposing and releasing oleic acid. Once this scent is in the air, the ants know it's time to take out the trash. Now, here's an interesting twist. Imagine you take a live ant and splash it with oleic acid. To the other ants, this live ant now smells like death. So what do? They carry it off to the graveyard, of course. The poor ant, still very much alive, is treated as a corpse simply because it smells like one. This is the harsh reality of the ant world. If you smell like a corpse, you're treated as one. But what if a living ant gets splashed with oleic acid? That's a question for the next scene. Stay tuned. Imagine being alive, but treated as dead by everyone around you. That's the fate of an ant covered in oleic acid. Let's delve into a fascinating experiment that highlights this peculiar aspect of ant life. A living ant was bathed in oleic acid, the chemical that ants associate with death. The result? Quite astonishing indeed. Despite its desperate attempts to clean itself, the living ant was treated as a corpse by its fellow ants. They didn't hesitate for a moment, nor did they check for signs of life. Instead, they promptly carried off their oleic acid-covered comrade to the ant graveyard, disregarding its struggles and protests. It's a harsh reality, but in the world of ants, you are what you smell like. If you emit the scent of death, you're considered dead, no questions asked. So, death in the ant world is not about loss or ascension, but simply a matter of smell. Are these ant graveyards a place of mourning? Not quite. Picture a bustling ant colony, a labyrinth of tunnels and chambers filled with industrious insects. But what happens when one of these diligent workers falls? They're taken to what we might perceive as an ant graveyard, a final resting place for their tiny comrades. But this isn't a place of mourning or reflection, it's more akin to a garbage dump, a place to dispose of the decomposing bodies that could otherwise pose a threat to their colony's health. Ant colonies are delicate ecosystems, susceptible to destruction by harmful bacteria and fungi. To protect their home, ants have a simple yet effective system. They regularly take out the trash, removing any potential sources of contamination, including their fallen comrades. This cleanup is driven by their incredible ability to detect the scent of oleic acid, the chemical signal of death. So, the next time you see ants in a frenzy, remember they might just be on cleanup duty taking out the trash.